Wassail. So there's no bells, there's no crystal, but there's this war memorial just behind me. I also forgot the microphone again, but I'll try and talk loudly, and I have shielded it from too much noise. I'm doing a quick reading as such that has no shuffling of cards, because this morning I decided to just test out the cards, see how they felt in Le Havre, and the message was so profound I felt I needed to share it here at this monument. So the first two cards out, I hope you can see them in this light. It's fire and sacrifice. But the important thing was 1944 was shouting at me. And 1944, when I looked it up, is actually the Bombardment of Le Havre. It took place between the 5th and the 11th of September in 1944, and it basically left the entire place destroyed. 2,053 people died. This was a bombardment by the British forces and the Allies on the German forces that were occupying France. But nonetheless, it's a devastation that takes place, and they kind of want to talk about this. It was something like 1,800 tons, 1,800 tons of bombs and some other massive figure of incendiary devices were just showered over the whole land. And if you Google search Le Havre bombardments, you'll just see that there's barely a building left standing. So this whole city is very much rebuilt. The next two cards that came out were Jaguar and the Holy Mountain. Now, this morning, Jaguar, more than he's ever done before, was looking really quite pissed off. It's the energy coming from these cards today is telling me that we have to stop putting this kind of memorials to war up. Yes, I know, look, people died, and that is appalling, and people suffered pain and PTSD and civilian lives affected, and no help being given is again another level of fear. But this glorification of this as if it's a holy mountain, again, that phrase in dulce et decorum est pro patri mori, it's sweet and fitting to die for your country. Look, I get it. There had to be a fight against fascism. All these things took place because they were meant to happen, and that's the way of life, unfortunately. But the point is that we need to learn now to let go. All around this area, all around Le Havre, are roads named after war heroes, generals, battles. It's like you can't tread anywhere without remembering the pains that were suffered by people, and that's true. We do need to remember things, but we also need to let them go at some point. You know, we don't anymore in Britain think about the 100 Years' War with France. It's a forgotten memory. I know that there are people still alive that remember these things, but quite often those people would really like to forget, to be honest. So the next three cards that came out are the Seven of Wands, the Eight of Swords, and the Queen of Wands. Again, this little trio of cards is talking about this kind of prophetic memory of what took place as being artificially sealed, and down here are the pokey sticks pushing through. Oh my god, there's the most amazing fountains that have just turned on down there to cleanse. Can you see them? Fantastic. So maybe we'll have a little wander down there as I finish this reading. So because that's exciting. Purifying waters have appeared to change things. So let's get up and let's move. Sorry about that. So let's go and see these fountains, because actually the next part of the message is a lot more hopeful. That's wonderful. Really, really wonderful fountains. I'll turn around and you can get to see them. There's 2 jets and they're hitting and creating a fabulous shape. I think I might be blocking it. I'm going to pause and I'm going to restart. No, I'm not. I'm just going to sit down and do it. Sorry, people. Look, that's exciting. So, I just need to take the bag off my shoulder to continue. So the next 2 cards, this prophecy, this idea that everything's sealed and remembered in only one way, we have next this. The 8 of Swords, the trauma that is caught within a person's inner being, and how we need to change that so that we can feel cleansed, let go of the past, to not think about the trauma, but to release the trauma. And then this card today was really stepping forwards as a kind of false memory, lighting all these candles and kind of holding a light out to the memory of war, and her, well, hey, putting her arm up, triumphant, we managed to get through this. But you know, she's kind of got this energy around her today that says we shouldn't need to be going through this. We shouldn't need to keep holding up this false hope and lighting candles to a trauma and not releasing it. Oh, and then it stopped. So the next 2 cards were from the Moonology. Hold your vision, a fixed moon, and what do you need to release? So the energy of these 2 cards today was nothing should be fixed. We don't need to keep holding things as fixed and as unchangeable. I mean, the idea that you criticize the memorials or those that have died would anger and infuriate so many people, and that's not the point of letting go. This fixed moon is saying it's time to see the void that's created between this idée fixe, this fixed idea, and the release of the trauma, so that you can actually heal from it. And look, let's face it, people all over the place. My mother, she remembers being down a shelter when she was very, very tiny, a small baby, and there's still fear of explosions and noises going off around them. And we forget that the civilians were just kind of told after war to just kind of get on with it, get on and do it. So next we have 3 cards from the Odin deck that got wet, and oddly it's all the watery cards. So we have Ran, trapping the emotions of mankind and not releasing them. And today she really is saying it's time to release, trapping us, trapping the emotions of soldiers, not spiritual warriors now, but this card today, the energy of it is soldiers, trapping the emotions of soldiers, which goes on with every war. And yet with every war we don't seem to want to give people adequate care afterwards for the traumas that they've witnessed and gone through. And then we have Loki. This was the card more than any that got the most wet in the sea, and it's the card of water and security, but it's also a message of being within a womb, being safe. But today the card was about how it's time now to let people be rebirthed, to come out of that womb and to feel the emotions flow. The next 2 cards again were from the Light Seers deck, and they were all about how the traumas of war leave the soldiers locked out, and that most would just like to be able to walk away from the memories. And yet we do this thing where we have to keep celebrating victories. And maybe if we didn't have all of the borders, because again, there's this thing about walls. I was reading today about Charles de Gaulle, because General de Gaulle is the name of the main road here, and I was curious about his history. And actually it says his name, because Gaul sounds very Gallic, Gauls, the Gauls, French, so it's almost a very national heroic name, but actually they believe his name comes from the Dutch word van der Goal, which was the keeper of the battlements, the walls of defense. And that energy of walls being broken down is what we need to keep doing, because it's time to transform. The energy around us is transforming, and we're being given this opportunity to transform. And the next two cards from the double and a start deck were transformation, so the Phoenix, and then the card of clear and activate. It's time to think about clearing the energies and activating a new frequency. Look, that new frequency is happening, whether we think about it or not. It will happen. It's underway, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. The next two cards were Jotunheimr, the land of the giants, and the Norns. So Jotunheimr and the Norns are talking about the grand epic ideas of governments around the world to keep talking to us, the little people, as if we don't really understand. And yet we have the raven on our head, which is telling us now that we're beginning to understand. This card is usually about some kind of new energy, and that's what this is. This is a new energy that is destined to come in. There's nothing that large governments and organizations can do to stop this frequency. It's happening. And then we had two cards from the mystical Shaman, 21-8. So here we have the gatherer and the circle. So it's telling us that it's now time for us to gather together into an energy of harvesting something new for the collective, everybody working together to bring about changes. Circles are cycles, things will change and refresh. And then the final two cards are really very beautiful. This card is going back to the idea of coming together, harmony, reunions, but at the moment the backs are turned, because we still need to understand that we live in an age where, look, during the war, particularly in France, more than any other country, and I'm not having a go at France, look, I'm so happy to be here, I'm just reading the energies that come through, but this was one of the countries that actually, and it was Charles de Gaulle who was part of this energy. And again, I'm not criticizing him. Everything happened because it had to happen. I'm bringing these points up so that we can learn to move on from them. But in this country, more than anywhere, anyone who was seen as a Nazi collaborator was really severely punished and humiliated. And this is why we haven't got the energy of the women here turning and facing us to look at us in the eyes and say that they feel accepted now. And that's a really important energy, because we are moving now into the age of the Hierophantrix, the divine feminine energy inside the earth grid, working with everything. So it's really important to think about the way in which we've treated women in the past, not to shame people, but to learn from it so that we can all move forwards. And then the final card is just a reminder that we can change everything. We can have contented, wonderful, blissful emotions if we just acknowledge that what happened before happened, and that's just the way it is. But what happens in the future is our choice, and it's down to us not to move forwards in shame, but to move forwards in love, forgiveness, and compassion. So that's the message from here in Le Havre today, and I'm really looking forward to getting on with some other messages that hopefully won't all be so full of the war. Wassail.